Hey guys, Matt here. This is my review of Reagan. This movie is directed by Sean McNamara, who previously directed The Miracle Season. The movie stars Dennis Quaid, Penelope Ann Miller, and Jon Voight. Now, the plot of this movie tells the story of the 37th President Ronald Reagan. The movie starts off with the assassination attempt in 1981, and then the movie kind of flashes back and tells the story of Ronald Reagan's life from childhood through the assassination attempt until the end of his life. The movie is told in an interesting way. It's told by the perspective of Jon Voight's character, who plays a Russian sympathizer who has been tracking and studying and observing Ronald Reagan throughout his career. And he's telling the story to a young KGB agent, which is interesting. It doesn't just show his life, it's his story. So everything is from his perspective, yet a lot of it is historically accurate. But hey, I guess their files are accurate. So, start with the acting in this movie. The acting, for the most part, was fine. A lot of the co-stars, a lot of the bigger names, you could say, have smaller roles, but for the lead role of Ronald Reagan, played by Dennis Quaid, he did a fine job. I almost felt like at the beginning that he was just doing a Ronald Reagan impersonation, but as the movie went on, it started to just seem natural. And his portrayal of Reagan wasn't as, silly as maybe Josh Brolin in W. It wasn't a caricature or a parody, and yet this movie wasn't so historically accurate, and the acting wasn't, cranked up to 11 like it would be in, let's say, Vice with Christian Bale. This movie was more or less the bullet points and the highlights of Ronald Reagan's career from childhood to being a movie star all the way through his presidency. Now, this movie's production value is not great. This is from Sean McNamara, who his movie kind of feels a lot like the Alex Kendrick movies, like Courageous, Fireproof, War Room, and most recently The Forge, where these movies are more or less religious propaganda, religious spiritual movies with that, that main undertone of, God and church with a historical or a life lesson, mixed into it. And that's what this movie is. The production value is not great. It's not like a huge Hollywood movie or blockbuster. You could tell a lot of money wasn't put into the making of this movie, but it got the point across that it had to focus on certain points of Reagan's life, and so it had to reenact, and the sets had to be built for the Berlin Wall, certain debates, certain moments in his life that were integral, and the movie was fine in that regard. Was I, believing that I was in the same room as these people? No, because a lot of the sets are small. A lot of the sets look cheap. A lot of the scenes are more focused on the actors, and then when they're further away, there's some CGI in there, so you could tell that they tried to de-age certain actors or make locations look the way they're supposed to look, but this movie is about the man's life and the information. This was almost like a documentary. This wasn't going to be a biopic where, a bunch of Academy Awards are going to be thrown at this movie. Maybe Dennis Quaid in this lead role, because we haven't really gotten a good Ronald Reagan biopic, actually, I think, ever. And so I'm glad that this movie was made. Now, going into this, I knew about Ronald Reagan. I knew about the Berlin Wall. I knew about a couple speeches he had made. I knew he was the president in the 80s, but I really didn't know too much information about his life. So I'm glad I saw this movie, because a lot of things that I didn't know were brought to light. A lot of moments that, for me as a younger man, weren't that important or moving, having seen what he went through and what his life was like, and the people around him that cared for him, his wife, his religious circles, his friends, everything that was important, everything that was historical, that did change the world, it was more powerful. And I found myself at some moments, a lot like the movie American Sniper, going into this biopic not knowing anything about this man, this character, that by the time it was over, I found myself, kind of emotional, because, his life, his fate, his destiny was so important to him. Everything he wanted to do, he felt he was destined to do it. And this is one of those feel-good movies where it shows you that if someone feels like they're drawn to something, that they have a cause, that they, have a purpose, that they're not going to let anything stop them. And that's the positivity of this movie. Was the production great? No. Was the music generic? Yes. It was almost probably public domain music, because a lot of moments where something important or dramatic had to happen, this generic music would play. There wasn't any violence in this movie. There wasn't anything super dramatic that would happen, because they would cut away to it. It would just have this swelling music, and then something would happen, and then characters would react to it. So it would kind of let you know, hey, this moment in history was important, or dramatic, or tragic, or what have you. So this movie, had heart. And I think if a movie can move the audience, then it did its job. And this movie did just that. Is this the best movie of the year? No. Is it a movie that I feel like we needed? Yeah. Because of all the presidents and real-life people that we've gotten biopics on, I feel like the Ronald Reagan movie was a long time coming. And so I'm glad we got this film. This movie also has a bunch of co-stars, including Matt Dillon, Xander Berkeley, Robert Davi, Justin Chatwin, the guy that plays Gorbachev. I cannot remember the actor's name, but he was in Home Alone 3. And a couple others. He plays usually serious roles, so it was nice to see this actor still there. Jon Voight is the storyteller in this movie, but what's interesting is that he tells the story of his perception of Ronald Reagan, yet when it shows flashbacks of Jon Voight, he doesn't say anything. He doesn't talk at all, which is interesting. So this movie was good. It was emotional when it needed to be. I did feel, though, that a lot of moments were too quick, as in it would say a year, a location, characters, who the real-life people were. It would do, the important Ronald Reagan moment or event that was supposed to happen, and then it would jump 4 years to the next moment, and then it would jump 2 years, or it would jump from moment to moment, again, almost like a bullet point documentary of Ronald Reagan's life. But by the end of the movie, you do feel something for, perhaps one of the best presidents that ever lived, and that is Ronald Reagan. And so the cast and crew did a good job. Dennis Quaid, he doesn't look like Ronald Reagan, but I could tell that his heart was in this role, and his impersonation was pretty good. So because this movie was surprisingly moving, yet it wasn't the best made movie, I'm going to give Reagan a B. This movie is not Lincoln, but at the same time, it's not, the worst movie you've seen all year. So I recommend this movie, guys. If you're a fan of history or presidents, check this out. Till next time, see ya.